The chief activist of One South Africa movement, Mmusi Maimane, says he has 10 steps to fix the country's education system for future generations. He points the problem to the dismal state of our education system, and he joins us now. Mmusi, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to The Full View.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans.
Now, when diagnosing the country's education system, Mmusi, it's very clear that it's flawed with poorly performing teachers, poor work ethics, the lack of community and parental support, poor control by education authorities, and poor support for teachers, and very low levels of accountability. What would you attribute this to?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I think we are living in a country that hasn't got a vision for the future, which means that our educational outcomes are not aligned to the skill base that we need. And I want to make this point, and it's a sad point to make, that at 27 years after the dawn of apartheid, the apartheid government knew what it wanted to achieve, which is to oppress and to miseducate people. Now, that was abhorrent. The question that must be asked is, this democratic government, 27 years on, what did it seek to achieve? And educationally, it's clear the fact that our young people are unemployable. Secondly, due to a lack of an economic vision, we are passing young people at 30%. And the ultimate crisis that we face is that education is suffering from union capture or state capture of a different kind, where at the end of the day, you simply cannot achieve the outcomes you want to achieve. And I'm calling for change if we want to see a future for this country.
In your opinion piece in February last year, you said, upon the release of matric exam results, the government's announcement and the celebration of top achievers, they actually mask the grim reality of the state of our basic education system. And you said that we get caught up in the euphoria of celebrating human accomplishment, the personal stories of overcoming, and the sheer brilliance that some possess even at a young age. And you made the allegation that the Education Department has constantly inflated the matric results. What informed that statement, since it is a serious indictment on the Education Department?
Absolutely, and I would say it again for this year. So our education system works on a 20-80 rule. 20% of the schools who are ex-Model C produce the results that we are describing. And we look at learners who come from there and we say, wow, they are going to Harvard, etc. And we celebrate. But 80% of the schools in the country are underperforming. At first level, they are asking to pass children at 30% at certain subjects. Furthermore, infrastructure, even in places like the Eastern Cape, 99% of the schools, they have got poor infrastructure, poor fencing, and still operate on pet latrines. And so when you look at the statement in and of itself, it's a reflection of the fact that the circumstances of your birth in this country still determine the kind of education that you are going to get. And so the Department of Education, by and large, has failed 80% of the children in our country. The last point I'll make is this, is that let's take a subject like mathematics. When we are passing young people at 30%, the number of young people who pass mathematics is over 50%. But if we were to raise that pass mark to 50% pass for maths, then only 21% of our young people pass mathematics at that level. So if you hear the statistic that says 21% of our children, only 21% of our children pass maths at over 50%, it tells you that our education system is fundamentally broken. So to me, we cannot just be celebrating just the top achievers and saying, wow, we are doing well. When we interrogate the issue, we realize we are not. And furthermore, the economic outcomes are there for all to see, in that our young people, 70% of the class of 2021 that was passed last week, will join the ranks of the unemployed in this country. This is a crisis.
It is indeed a crisis. But let me just pick your brain on this. Why do you think some schools manage to survive, if not thrive, in adverse contexts where neighboring schools remain in crisis?
The first and most vital is leadership. So if you appoint the best principals and avoid, as the Jobs for Pals report showed, that demonstrated that SARTU had captured the education system. If you eradicate that and appoint the best leaders, that's the first. The second is the stability of family, in that you need an invested parent who is able to make sure that child does well, shows that that child will be able to get through the schooling system. Thirdly, we've got to focus on primary school education. Schools that do well focus on primary school to ensure that children, by the time they hit the age of 10, can read for meaning. You have to ensure that you invest in the infrastructure of that school. Schools cannot be places that are not safe. That's why, as part of our 10-point plan, we say, how much do we put in the safety of young people in schools? And lastly, ultimately, once you've dealt with that, is teachers who are willing to subject themselves to being assessed, and so that you can reward the teachers who do well and dismiss the teachers who don't do well. Because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter. The system will keep producing the same outcomes. And therefore, the call that I make still maintains that as part of the 10-point plan, we have to replicate models of success, build the right infrastructure, reward the best teachers, and partner with communities to bring about the change. If we don't do that, I can assure you, you'll always have this differentiated education system. That's why even teachers who teach in certain township schools will not have their own children come to those schools. They'll rather send them to the ex-Model C schools, as it were.
And the bigger problem, I suppose, is the educational inequalities. And, it reportedly starts at home and it continues in the schools. How do we navigate around that?
Well, I think we need to be honest as a country to say, are we incentivizing parental involvement in schools by ensuring that there are economic opportunities closer to home? Because the apartheid project said, let the parents move away from home so that young people can raise themselves. We've got to reinvest into our economic system so that there's closer to centers where people can work closer to home and young people can study closer to home. Because it's no use when a young person is further away from home to study. Secondly, I think that we need to ask for continuous assessment over the education system. And one of the things that I've been very conscious about is to build an independent inspectorate of education. You can't just dismiss all assessments. You've got to make sure that the inspectorate can investigate and ensure that there's progress all across the time. And then lastly, I really do maintain that at some point we need to face this question head on and say, particularly as South Africans who are democratic in the democratic dispensation, what is the vision of the education system? And ultimately, this current Minister of Education cannot deliver that. Let us appoint someone independent, as the Constitution provides, so that we can offer the appropriate leadership in the Department of Education so that we bring about the change.
All right, Mmusi, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your analysis on this matter.
My great privilege. Thank you very much.
That is Chief Activist of One South Africa Movement, Mmusi Maimane, just weighing in on the state of South Africa's education system.